It's time to rest now. Wherever you are, whatever kind of day you've had, you can let it all go. The only thing that matters now is this moment and the gentle journey we're about to take together. Tonight we're going to visit a very special place. A small village in the English countryside where the rain falls soft and steady and time moves at its own unhurried pace. Take a moment now to settle yourself more deeply into your bed. Feel the weight of the blankets resting over you. Let your head sink into the pillow. Allow your shoulders to drop, releasing any tension you've been carrying. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Just listen and let your mind drift. The village we're visiting is called Mossbury. It sits nestled in the Cotswolds, surrounded by rolling green hills and ancient stone walls that have stood for centuries. The buildings here are made of honey-colored limestone, warm and golden even on gray days. Narrow lanes wind between cottages with thatched roofs and climbing roses. A gentle stream runs through the village center, its quiet burbling a constant companion to daily life. And on one of these narrow lanes, there stands a bakery. The Willow Lane Bakery has been part of Mossbury for over 200 years. Its walls have seen generations come and go. Its ovens have warmed countless cold mornings. And now, it belongs to a woman named Nora. Nora Whitfield came to Mossbury 3 years ago seeking something she couldn't quite name. She'd spent nearly a decade in London, working in marketing, sitting in endless meetings under fluorescent lights, answering emails that never seemed to stop arriving. She was good at her job. Everyone said so. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten what it felt like to make something with her hands, to watch bread rise, to see the simple pleasure on someone's face when they take their first bite of something warm and sweet. When she found the bakery for sale, she didn't hesitate. She sold her flat, packed her things, and drove 3 hours west into a life she'd never imagined for herself. Now her days begin before dawn and end with flour dusted on her apron. Her hands are always warm, her mind is quiet, and she has found at last the thing she'd been searching for without knowing it. Home. Tonight, we're going to spend some time with Nora. We'll follow her through 4 different days across different seasons. We'll watch her bake and listen to the rain and meet some of the people who make Mossbury feel like a family. So close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Let your breathing slow, and let's begin. The rain begins sometime in the night. Nora doesn't remember when exactly. She only knows that when she surfaces from sleep, the sound is already there, a gentle percussion against the roof tiles above her bed. She lies still for a moment, eyes closed, listening. Each drop lands softly, merging into a continuous whisper. It's the kind of rain that settles in for the day, unhurried and thorough. The room is dark. It's always dark at this hour, this time of year. Autumn has pulled the mornings closer to night, and dawn won't arrive for another 2 hours at least. But Nora's body knows when to wake. After 3 years of early mornings, her internal clock is perfectly calibrated to the rhythm of the bakery. She stretches slowly under the covers, pointing her toes, arching her back, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles waking from rest. The sheets are soft against her skin, warm from the cocoon she's created through the night. Part of her wants to stay here, burrowed in this comfort. But the larger part is already thinking about flour and yeast, about the first batch of scones, about the kettle that will soon be whistling in the bakery kitchen. She sits up slowly and swings her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet find her slippers in the darkness, soft sheepskin that she bought at the village market 2 winters ago. They've molded perfectly to the shape of her feet now. Every morning they're waiting for her, faithful as old friends. The cottage is small, just 2 rooms above the bakery itself, a bedroom and a sitting room with a tiny bathroom tucked under the eaves. The previous owner had lived elsewhere, but when Nora bought the place, she saw no reason to find separate accommodation. She likes being close to her work. She likes falling asleep to the faint scent of bread that rises through the floorboards. She pads through to the sitting room where a small kitchen occupies one corner. The kettle is an old-fashioned stovetop one, copper with a wooden handle. She fills it at the tap and sets it on the burner, then stands at the window while she waits for it to boil. Outside, the world is a study in gray. Gray sky, gray stone, gray puddles forming in the lane below. But it's a soft gray, somehow comforting, rather than dreary. The street lamps cast pools of amber light that reflect off the wet cobblestones. A few windows in neighboring cottages show warm glows behind drawn curtains, other early risers perhaps, or night owls finally heading to bed. The kettle begins to whisper, then builds to a gentle rumble. Nora takes down her favorite mug, a large one with a chip on the handle and a faded pattern of bluebells around the rim. She found it at a charity shop in the next village over, and it holds exactly the right amount of tea to start her day. She measures loose leaves into a small infuser, places it in the mug, and pours the boiling water over it. Steam rises, carrying the rich scent of black tea into the air. She adds a splash of milk and carries the mug back to the window seat, tucking her feet up beneath her. The rain continues its steady rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a car passes on the main road, tires hissing on wet tarmac. Then silence again, broken only by the patter of drops on glass. Nora drinks her tea slowly, letting the warmth spread through her. There's no rush. The bakery won't open for another 2 hours, and she has her routine down to an art now. She knows exactly how long each task will take, exactly when she needs to start each batch to have everything ready when the first customers arrive. When the mug is empty, she rinses it at the sink and leaves it on the draining board. Then she dresses quickly in the dim bedroom. Dark trousers, a soft cotton shirt, her favorite cardigan in forest green. She'll put an apron on over everything once she's downstairs, but she likes to feel properly dressed even before the day begins. The staircase leading down to the bakery is narrow and steep, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Nora descends carefully, one hand trailing along the wall for balance. At the bottom, a door opens directly into the bakery kitchen. She reaches for the light switch, and the room springs into view. Stainless steel surfaces gleam under the fluorescent tubes. A large commercial oven sits against the far wall, cold and patient. Shelves hold mixing bowls of various sizes, measuring cups, wooden spoons worn silky from use. Everything is clean and orderly, left that way by Nora herself at the end of yesterday's shift. She ties on her apron, a blue and white striped one that her mother gave her when she first announced she was buying a bakery. At the time, her mother had seemed uncertain about the whole venture. Now she visits every few months, staying in the spare room at the pub down the lane, eating scones every morning and pronouncing them better than anything she ever made at home. The first task is always the same: get the oven warming. Nora turns the dial and hears the familiar click and whoosh of the gas igniting. While it heats, she gathers ingredients for scones, flour from the large bin beneath the counter. She scoops it into a mixing bowl, watching the white powder fall in soft drifts. Salt and sugar measured precisely. Cold butter from the refrigerator, cut into small cubes. Buttermilk, thick and tangy, poured into a well at the center of the dry ingredients. Her hands work automatically now, cutting the butter into the flour with a pastry blender until the mixture resembles coarse sand. Then folding in the buttermilk with a wooden spoon, turning the dough out onto the floured counter, pressing it gently into shape. She doesn't use a rolling pin for scones. The secret she learned from an old recipe book she found in the bakery's storage room is to handle the dough as little as possible. Overworking makes them tough. So she presses gently with her palms, shaping rather than forcing, until the dough is about an inch thick. Then the circular cutter, dipped in flour to prevent sticking, pressed straight down without twisting. Twist and the edges seal, and the scones won't rise properly. Straight down, lift straight up. One by one, perfect rounds appear on the baking tray. She brushes the tops with a little extra buttermilk to help them brown, then slides the tray into the oven. The heat presses against her face for a moment before she closes the door. While the scones bake, she moves to the front of the shop. The bakery's public space is small but carefully arranged. A glass display case curves along one wall, waiting to be filled with the day's offerings. Mismatched wooden tables occupy the middle of the room, each with 2 or 3 chairs pulled up to them. A long wooden counter separates the customer area from the service space, where an old brass till sits beside a jar of wooden coffee stirrers. But the most distinctive feature is the door. When Nora bought the bakery, the door was painted a sensible brown. One of her first projects was to change that. Now it's a deep sage green, the color of herbs in early summer. A brass handle, polished by countless hands, gleams against the wood. She unlocks the door but doesn't open it yet. The first customers won't arrive for another hour. Instead, she turns to the task of arranging the display case. From the kitchen, she retrieves yesterday's remaining biscuits, still fresh enough to sell at a small discount. She arranges them on a lower shelf with a small card reading "Day-Old Selection." Then she checks the coffee machine, refilling the beans and running water through to warm the system. The timer chimes. The scones are ready. Nora retrieves them from the oven, golden brown and risen to perfect heights. The smell fills the kitchen instantly, buttery and warm and impossibly comforting. She transfers them to a wire rack to cool, then starts a second batch immediately. This batch will have lemon. She zests 2 fruits into the flour before mixing, watching the bright yellow flecks disappear into the white. The scent of citrus mingles with the warmth of the oven, fresh and clean. While this batch bakes, she begins the lemon curd. It's a simple recipe, really. Eggs, sugar, butter, lemon juice. But the execution requires patience and attention. Everything goes into a heat-proof bowl set over a pan of simmering water. Then constant stirring, gentle heat, watching the mixture transform from thin and pale to thick and golden. The wooden spoon moves in slow circles through the mixture. Steam rises from the pan below. Nora's arm aches slightly from the repetitive motion, but she doesn't stop. The curd needs this constant attention, this steady rhythm. Stop stirring and it might curdle. Rush the heat and it will scramble. So she stirs and waits and watches the slow alchemy happen. Outside the kitchen window, she can see the lane beginning to lighten. Not with sunshine, not today, but with the gray promise of morning. A few figures hurry past, hunched under umbrellas. Someone's dog shakes water from its coat before disappearing into a doorway. The curd thickens. Nora lifts the spoon and watches the mixture coat the back of it, heavy and glossy. Perfect. She removes the bowl from the heat and stirs in the last of the butter, watching it melt into silk. Then she pours the curd into a clean jar and sets it aside to cool. The lemon scones come out of the oven, fragrant and golden. She arranges them in the display case beside the plain ones, adding small cards to identify each type. Then she fills a small dish with the fresh lemon curd and places it beside them, ready for customers who want to add a dollop to their order. The bakery is nearly ready to open now. Nora surveys the display case, the clean tables, the polished counter, everything in its place, everything waiting. She walks to the door and turns the sign from closed to open. Through the glass, she can see the rain still falling, lighter now, but persistent. A delivery van splashes through a puddle at the end of the lane. The church clock strikes 8, its chimes muffled by the weather. Her first customer arrives within minutes. It's Arthur, as it always is on weekday mornings. He's a retired teacher, well into his 80s now, who's lived in Mossbury his entire life. He walks to the bakery every day, rain or shine, for his morning tea and plain scone. He shakes water from his umbrella before stepping inside, nodding to Nora as he makes his way to his usual table by the window. She doesn't need to take his order. The routine is established. She pours his tea from the large pot she keeps ready behind the counter, adds milk exactly as he likes it, and selects the best of the plain scones to plate alongside a small pot of butter. Arthur accepts the delivery with the same nod he gives every morning, brief but warm. Then he settles into his chair, unfolds the newspaper he's brought with him, and begins his daily ritual of tea and reading while the rain traces patterns on the window beside him. More customers trickle in as the morning progresses. Young mothers with pushchairs, grateful for a warm place to rest while their babies sleep. Office workers from the next village, stopping in before their commute to the town. A group of walkers in waterproof jackets, their planned hike rained out, deciding to make a morning of tea and scones instead. The lemon scones disappear quickly. By 10 o'clock, Nora has made a third batch, and those two are nearly gone. The lemon curd proves especially popular. Several customers ask if she sells it in jars, and she makes a mental note to prepare extra next week. Around 11, the door opens, and Edith appears. Edith is Nora's neighbor, a woman in her late 70s, with silver hair always pinned up neatly, and a collection of brooches that she rotates, according to some system Nora has never quite understood. Today's brooch features a small silver cat with green glass eyes. She brings with her a small bouquet of roses from her garden wrapped in brown paper. The flowers are deep red, their petals beaded with raindrops. Their scent, rich and sweet, fills the bakery as Edith sets them on the counter. "Last of the season," Edith says. "The cold's coming. They won't last much longer." This is their arrangement, unspoken but understood. Edith brings flowers from her garden when they're blooming. Nora provides tea and scones in return. Neither keeps track of who owes whom what. The exchange happens naturally, as such things do in small villages. Nora fills a small ceramic vase with water and arranges the roses on the counter where customers can admire them. Then she plates 2 lemon scones, adds a generous portion of curd, and carries everything to the table where Edith has settled. They sit together for a while, talking about small things. The weather, Edith's garden, a new family that's moved into one of the cottages at the end of the lane, Arthur's crossword puzzle, which he's been muttering over for the past hour. The rain continues outside, steady and soft. Inside, the bakery is warm, filled with the gentle murmur of conversation and the fragrance of fresh baking. Nora feels a familiar contentment settle over her, the quiet satisfaction of a morning well spent. She looks around at the faces in her bakery, Arthur with his newspaper, Edith with her tea, the young mothers comparing notes on sleepless nights, the walkers planning alternative routes for drier days, all of them sheltered here for this moment from the gray weather outside. This is what she came here for, she thinks. Not just the baking, though she loves that too, but this, the gathering, the community, the simple act of providing a warm place to be. The church clock strikes noon, the rain begins to lighten, and in the window seat by the door, a marmalade cat named Crumble stretches, yawns, and settles back into sleep, lulled by the warmth of the bakery and the soft sound of rain on glass. Summer has finally arrived in Mossbury. After a spring that seemed reluctant to end, all gray skies and stubborn cold, the warmth has come at last. The village has transformed. Roses climb cottage walls in explosions of pink and white. Gardens overflow with lavender and foxglove. The stream that runs through the center of town moves slower now, warmed by long afternoons of sunshine. But today, for the first time in nearly 3 weeks, it's raining. Nora wakes to the sound and smiles. The garden has been desperate for this. The greenhouse, too. She's been carrying watering cans back and forth for days, trying to keep everything alive through the unusual heat. This rain is different from the autumn kind, from the winter kind. It's warm. The drops that tap against the window feel gentle rather than insistent. A soft shower rather than a determined downpour. The sky is not the heavy gray of colder months, but a pale, luminous white, as if the sun is hiding just behind the clouds, waiting for its chance to break through. Nora lies still for a moment, listening. The rhythm is soothing. Each drop seems to land with a whisper, a hushed conversation between sky and earth. The air coming through her slightly open window smells of wet grass and blooming flowers, clean and green and alive. She stretches slowly, feeling the pleasant looseness in her muscles. Summer mornings make her feel this way, relaxed and unhurried, even when there's work to be done. The days are long enough that there's no need to rush. Time expands in the warmth, stretches out like a cat in a patch of sunlight. She rises and goes through her morning routine. Tea by the window, watching the rain fall on the lane below. The cobblestones gleam wetly, reflecting the pale sky. A few villagers hurry past with umbrellas, but most seem unbothered by the shower. This is England, after all. A little rain never stopped anyone. Dressed and ready, Nora descends the narrow stairs to the bakery kitchen. The oven goes on. Flour comes out. The rhythm of the morning begins, but today, before she starts on scones, she has somewhere else to be. The greenhouse stands at the back of the bakery, attached to the main building by a short covered walkway. The previous owner had used it to grow herbs, but Nora has expanded its purpose. Now it holds not just basil and rosemary and thyme, but also strawberries, rows and rows of them, climbing up wooden trellises, their leaves a deep green canopy hiding the red jewels beneath. She steps into the greenhouse and the temperature changes immediately. Even on a rainy day like this, the glass enclosure traps warmth. The air is humid and fragrant, heavy with the scent of growing things. Rain patters on the glass roof above her head, creating a sound like gentle applause. The strawberries are ready. She's been watching them for days, waiting for exactly this moment. The berries hang heavy on their stems, perfectly ripe, their color the deep red of summer itself. She touches one gently with her fingertip, feeling its warmth, its slight give. Perfect. She retrieves a basket from a hook by the door and begins to pick. The work is meditative, unhurried. She moves along the rows, examining each berry, selecting only those that are fully ripe. Some are small, no bigger than her thumbnail. Others are large and heavy, threatening to pull their stems from the plants. Each one goes into the basket with care, nestled gently so as not to bruise. The rain continues on the glass above. Inside the greenhouse, it sounds different than it does in the cottage. More immediate somehow, as if she's standing at the very edge of the storm, separated from it by only a thin membrane of glass. She finds herself moving slower, savoring the experience. The warmth of the greenhouse, the scent of ripe berries, the soft percussion of rain. These are the moments she came to Mossbury for. These small pleasures, so easily overlooked in the rush of city life. In London, she never would have noticed a morning like this. She would have been underground on the tube, or hurrying through crowded streets with an umbrella, or sitting in a fluorescent-lit office, watching the rain streak down windows she couldn't open. The seasons had been something that happened outside, glimpsed briefly between buildings, largely irrelevant to her daily existence. Now she stands at the center of them. She feels the shift from spring to summer in her bones. She knows when the rain is coming by the way the air smells, by the behavior of the birds at the feeder outside her window. She has become attuned to the natural world in a way she never knew was possible. The basket fills. Red berries pile on red berries, a treasure more valuable than any she could have earned in her old life. When she's gathered enough, she carries them back through the covered walkway and into the kitchen. Now the real work begins. She rinses the berries gently under cool water, then spreads them on clean towels to dry. Some she'll use fresh, sliced, and arranged on top of tarts, but most will become jam. Jam making is one of Nora's favorite summer activities. There's something deeply satisfying about transforming fresh fruit into something that will last for months, capturing the essence of the season in a jar. When winter comes and the days are short and cold, she'll open a pot of this jam and taste summer again. She begins by hulling the berries, using a small paring knife to remove the green tops. The knife moves in small circles, quick and efficient. She's done this enough times now that her hands know the movements without conscious thought. The hulled berries go into a large copper pot, the same one that's been hanging in this kitchen for longer than anyone can remember. She adds sugar, measuring by feel rather than strict amounts. A little lemon juice for pectin. Then the pot goes on the stove, the flame set low. Slowly, the berries begin to release their juices. The sugar melts into the liquid, creating a syrup that bubbles gently around the fruit. Nora stirs occasionally, watching the transformation happen. The color deepens. The scent intensifies. Steam rises from the pot, carrying the perfume of strawberries throughout the kitchen. Outside, the rain continues, but it's lighter now, tapering off to a drizzle. Nora can see patches of blue beginning to appear between the clouds. The sun will return soon, she knows. This shower was just a brief interruption, a gift to the thirsty gardens. The jam thickens. She tests it the old-fashioned way, dropping a small amount onto a cold plate from the refrigerator. If it wrinkles when she pushes it with her finger, it's ready. The first test is too thin. She lets it cook a bit longer, stirring, waiting, then tests again. This time, the wrinkle appears. Perfect. She ladles the hot jam into sterilized jars, filling them nearly to the brim. Then she seals each one with a lid and turns it upside down to cool. As the jam cools, it will create a vacuum seal, preserving the contents for months to come. 6 jars of strawberry jam. She lines them up on the counter and admires her work. The glass gleams in the morning light, the jam inside a deep ruby red. Each jar holds summer inside it, preserved and waiting. Now she turns to the tarts. The pastry cases she prepared yesterday wait in the refrigerator, already blind baked and cooled. She takes them out and sets them on the counter. Perfect golden cups, ready to receive their filling. First, a layer of pastry cream. She made this yesterday too, vanilla scented and silky smooth. She spreads it carefully into each case, using the back of a spoon to create an even layer. Then come the strawberries. She arranges them in concentric circles, starting from the outside and working in. Large berries first, their pointed ends facing up. Smaller ones fill the gaps, creating a mosaic of red against the pale cream. The effect is beautiful, she thinks. Simple but striking. The final touch is a glaze. She heats a small amount of the fresh jam, thinning it with a little water until it's brushable. Then she paints it over the berries with a pastry brush, giving them a shine, sealing in their freshness. 8 perfect strawberry tarts. She carries them carefully to the display case in the front of the shop. The bakery has been open for an hour now, with Lucy, her part-time assistant, managing the counter while Nora worked in the kitchen. The morning rush has subsided, leaving a comfortable quiet. A few customers sit at the tables, enjoying their tea. Arthur is in his usual spot by the window, newspaper folded on the table before him. Lucy's eyes widen when she sees the tarts. "Those are gorgeous," she says. "Are those from the greenhouse?" Nora nods, sliding the tarts into the display case. First harvest of the season. Word spreads quickly in a small village. By noon, half the tarts are gone. by 3, only one remains, reserved for Edith, who comes in just as the clouds finally part and the sun breaks through. The older woman settles at her usual table, the silver cat brooch, replaced today by a delicate butterfly in blue and green. Nora brings her the tart along with a pot of tea, and they sit together in the warm afternoon light that now streams through the windows. Edith takes a bite and closes her eyes. "This," she says, "is what summer tastes like." Nora smiles. Outside, the lane is steaming gently as the sun dries the rain-soaked cobblestones. The village is waking from its rainy morning drowsiness, people emerging from cottages to enjoy the returned warmth. Children's voices float through the open door, laughter and shouts from some game in the green. In the window seat, Crumble stretches in a patch of sunlight, his orange fur glowing gold. His purr is audible from across the room, a low rumble of contentment that seems to match the mood of the afternoon perfectly. Nora looks at the jars of jam lined up behind the counter, at the empty spaces in the display case where the tarts used to be, at Edith enjoying her tea, at the sunshine flooding through the windows after the rain. She feels a fullness in her chest that has nothing to do with the scone she ate for breakfast. This is happiness, she thinks. Not the dramatic kind, not fireworks or grand gestures, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes from simple pleasures and meaningful work, the kind that settles into your bones and stays there. The afternoon wears on warm and golden. Customers come and go. The sun traces its arc across the sky. And in the greenhouse at the back of the bakery, more strawberries ripen slowly, waiting for tomorrow's harvest. The village fete is tomorrow. Nora stands in her kitchen in the early morning darkness, surrounded by ingredients and equipment: flour in bags, sugar in jars, eggs lined up in cardboard trays. The old electric mixer, salvaged from the previous owner's collection, sits ready on the counter. And in the center of it all, the recipe card that started everything. She found the card in a drawer during her first week in Mossbury. It was tucked behind a collection of takeaway menus and expired coupons, yellowed with age and spotted with what might have been butter or might have been decades of handling. The handwriting was old-fashioned, careful cursive that spoke of an era when penmanship mattered. Victoria Sponge, it read, and beneath that, in smaller letters, Mother's recipe never fails. Nora has made this cake dozens of times since then. It's become one of the bakery's signatures, the thing that people drive from neighboring villages to buy. But tomorrow is different. Tomorrow is the Fett's baking competition, an annual tradition that dates back nearly a century. And for the first time, Nora has entered. Edith encouraged her. Over tea one afternoon, she'd mentioned casually that no one had made a proper Victoria sponge for the competition in years. "All these fancy things now," she'd said with a small wave of her hand. "Macarons and cronuts and whatever else. Nothing wrong with them, I suppose, but sometimes the old ways are best." So here Nora stands, in the gray pre-dawn light, preparing to make the most perfect cake she's ever made. Outside, a light rain is falling. The drops are so fine they're almost mist, more of a dampness in the air than an actual shower. This kind of rain doesn't make much sound. It simply exists, hovering between earth and sky, settling on everything with a gentle persistence. Nora begins by taking the butter
from the refrigerator. It needs to be at room temperature for the recipe to work properly, soft enough to cream, but not so soft
that it turns oily. She cut it into cubes last night and left it covered on the counter, and now when she presses a finger into one of the pieces, it gives just the right amount. She measures out the sugar, pouring it into the mixing bowl in a steady stream. Golden castor sugar, fine and pale. It smells faintly of molasses, a warm sweetness that makes her think of childhood Christmases. The butter goes in with the sugar, and she begins to beat them together. The mixer whirs, working the two ingredients into one. At first, the mixture is coarse and grainy, but slowly, as air is incorporated, it becomes light and fluffy, almost white in color. This is the foundation of a good sponge, she knows. Everything else builds on this. She cracks the eggs one by one into a small bowl, checking each for quality before adding it to the mixture. The yolks are deep orange, almost red, the color that comes from chickens, allowed to roam free and eat what chickens are meant to eat. She gets them from a farm up the road, collects them herself every Wednesday morning. Each egg goes in slowly, with the mixer running, giving the batter time to absorb it before the next one is added. Too fast and the mixture will curdle. And while it can usually be salvaged, it's better not to risk it. Today of all days. Next comes the flour. She's sifted it twice already, once this night, once this morning, to ensure it's as light as possible. Self-raising flour, which has the leavening already mixed in. She adds it gradually, folding it through the batter with a large metal spoon. This is the delicate part. Overmix and the gluten develops, making the cake tough rather than tender. So she folds gently, turning the bowl and cutting through the batter just until the flour disappears. A few small lumps are fine, better than overmixing. The batter is beautiful, pale gold, smooth, dropping from the spoon in heavy ribbons. She divides it between two prepared tins, using a scale to ensure each has exactly the same amount. Precision matters in baking. A heavier layer will sink, a lighter one will dome too much. Into the oven they go. She sets the timer and then stands back, watching through the window in the door as the cakes begin their transformation. While she waits, she prepares the filling. The traditional Victoria sponge uses jam and cream. Some recipes call for buttercream, but to Nora, that's a modern corruption. The original recipe, the one written on the card in faded cursive, calls for whipped cream. Fresh, simple, unadorned. She pours heavy cream into a chilled bowl and begins to whip. The cream foams and thickens, swirls forming in its surface. She watches carefully, stopping just before it becomes too stiff. Over-whipped cream turns grainy, and there's no fixing that. She adds a small spoonful of sugar and a few drops of vanilla, then sets the bowl in the refrigerator to stay cold. The jam is her own, of course. Strawberry made from greenhouse berries back in
summer, preserved for exactly this kind of occasion. She opens one of the jars and breathes in the scent. Even months later, it still smells like sunshine. The timer chimes. Nora opens the oven door and tests the cakes with a skewer. It comes out clean. Perfect. She lifts them onto wire racks to cool, turning them out of their tins after a few minutes. They're perfectly risen, golden brown on top, with a fine crumb visible where she's run a knife around the edges. She feels a flutter of hope in her chest. This might actually work. The cakes need to cool completely before assembly. She uses this time to open the bakery, serve the morning customers, keep everything running as normal. But her mind keeps drifting back to the cakes on the counter, to the competition tomorrow, to the judges who will taste her work and render their verdict. Around 11, Edith appears. She doesn't mention the fete or the competition, just settles into her usual spot and orders her usual tea. But there's a knowing look in her eye when Nora brings over the cup, a small smile that suggests she understands exactly what Nora is feeling. "Cakes smelled wonderful this morning," she says mildly. "Didn't happen to make an extra one, did you?" Nora laughs. She always makes an extra when she's testing a recipe, a practice run to ensure everything is right before the final attempt. "There might be a slice or two available," she admits. She retrieves the practice cake from the kitchen and cuts a generous slice. The layers are even, the cream smooth between them. The jam shows as a thin red line, perfectly distributed. She places it before Edith and waits, more nervous than she'd care to admit. Edith takes her time. She examines the slice from several angles, presses the top lightly with her fork, testing the spring. Finally, she cuts a small bite and raises it to her mouth. The silence stretches for what feels like an eternity. "Well," Edith says finally, "I think Mrs. Patterson's winning streak might be coming to an end." Relief floods through Nora, followed immediately by a fresh wave of nerves. But beneath both is something warmer, a glow of satisfaction that has nothing to do with winning or losing. She made something good, something that brought pleasure to someone she cares about. In the end, that's what matters most. The afternoon passes quietly. The rain continues its gentle misting, never quite stopping, but never building to anything more substantial. Customers come and go. Nora serves scones and pours tea and thinks about tomorrow. As the day winds down, she begins the final assembly of her competition cake. The layers have cooled completely now, firm and stable. She places one on a china plate, spreads it with a generous layer of jam, then adds the whipped cream. The second layer goes on top, positioned carefully so the edges align. Finally, a dusting of powdered sugar over the top, applied through a fine sieve. The white powder settles on the golden cake like snow. On autumn leaves, she steps back and looks at her creation. It's simple, unadorned, nothing fancy, nothing that would grace the cover of a food magazine. But it's beautiful in its simplicity, a tribute to generations of home bakers who knew that sometimes the plainest things are the most satisfying. She covers the cake carefully with a glass dome and carries it to the refrigerator. Tomorrow she'll take it to the fete, place it on the judging table, and hope for the best. But for now, she's content just to sit at one of her own tables, watching the evening settle over the village through rain-streaked windows. Crumble jumps up onto the seat beside her, butting his head against her hand until she strokes his ears. Whatever happens tomorrow, she thinks, this is enough. This quiet, this community, this life she's built from scratch, like a cake from simple ingredients. The rain continues to fall, soft and steady, as darkness gathers over Mossbury. The fog rolls in just as Nora is closing up the bakery. She notices it first as a softening of the street lamps, their yellow glow becoming diffuse and hazy. Then the edges of the buildings across the lane start to blur. Within minutes, the world beyond the bakery windows has become a study in gray,
All hard lines dissolved into mist. It's late October now. The days have shortened dramatically since summer. By 5 o'clock, the light is already fading, and by 6, when Nora finally turns the sign from open to closed, full darkness has fallen. But tonight feels different. The fog changes everything, muffling sounds and swallowing distances. The church clock strikes 6, but the chimes seem to come from very far away, distant and dreamlike. Nora lingers by the window, watching the fog thicken. A fine drizzle has begun to fall, so light it's barely visible, except where it catches the lamplight. The combination of fog and rain creates a cocoon around the bakery, sealing it off from the rest of the world. She should go upstairs. It's been a long day. And there's soup in the refrigerator, left over from the batch she made on Sunday. But something keeps her rooted to the spot, watching the mist swirl outside the glass. She decides to bake bread. It's not something she normally does in the evening. Her morning routine is efficient, practiced, designed to have the bakery stocked and ready when the doors open. Evening is for resting, for reading, for the quiet activities that balance out the early mornings. But tonight something calls her to the kitchen. The fog, maybe, the strange, suspended feeling in the air, the sense that time has slowed, that the usual rules don't apply. She gathers her ingredients. Flour, the strong bread flour she orders specially from a mill in Wales. Water, lukewarm from the tap. Salt, and a small jar of sourdough starter that's been living in her refrigerator for almost 3 years now. Fed and tended like a very undemanding pet. The starter has a history. Nora created it during her first winter in Mossbury, mixing flour and water and waiting patiently for wild yeast to colonize the mixture. It took several attempts. The first batch went moldy. The second never quite activated, but the third took hold, bubbling and growing, developing the sour smell that gives sourdough its name. She's kept it alive ever since, adding flour and water every few days, using portions of it in her bread. It's become part of the bakery's identity, this living thing that transforms simple ingredients into something extraordinary. She measures the starter into a large bowl, adds water, and stirs until the mixture is smooth and milky. Then the flour goes in, along with the salt. She mixes roughly with a wooden spoon, bringing everything together into a shaggy mass. Now comes her favorite part. She tips the dough onto the floured counter and begins to knead. The motion is ancient, unchanged, since the first bread bakers thousands of years ago. Push with the heel of the hand, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. Over and over in a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The dough resists at first, rough and uncooperative. But gradually, as she works it, something changes. The proteins in the flour begin to align, forming long chains of gluten that give bread its structure. The texture smooths, the mass becomes elastic, springy, alive under her hands. She kneads for 10 minutes, then 15. There's no rush tonight. The fog has stopped time, or at least slowed it to a crawl. She can take as long as she needs. Outside, the drizzle has intensified slightly. She can hear it now, a soft hiss against the windows. The fog is still thick, pressing against the glass, like something alive and curious. And the dough is smooth and supple. She shapes it into a ball and places it in an oiled bowl, covering it with a clean towel. It will rise slowly overnight, developing flavor and texture. By morning,
It will have doubled in size, ready for shaping and baking, but she's not ready to stop yet. She starts a second batch, this one with additions. Rosemary from the greenhouse, stripped from its stems and chopped fine. A handful of olives pitted and roughly torn. A drizzle of good olive oil worked into the dough. The scent of rosemary fills the kitchen as she kneads, herby and sharp, cutting through the warm, yeasty smell of the dough. The olives leave dark streaks through the pale mass, promising bursts of salt and richness in the finished bread. This batch, too, goes into a bowl to rise. She covers it and sets it beside the first, 2 mounds of potential waiting to be transformed by time and heat. The kitchen is warm now. The oven has been off for hours, but the heat of her work has accumulated, making the space cozy against the damp chill outside. She wipes down the counter, puts away the flour and the starter, washes her hands in water that feels cold after the warmth of the dough. In the front of the bakery, a small wood-burning stove sits in the corner. It's mostly decorative now, superseded by modern heating, but Nora keeps it functional. On nights like this, she lights it. She builds a small fire with kindling and a single log, striking a match and watching the flame catch and spread. The wood crackles softly as it burns, sending flickering light across the walls. The smell of wood smoke mingles with the lingering scent of bread from the day's baking. She settles into the armchair beside the stove, pulling a blanket over her lap. Crumble appears from wherever he's been sleeping and jumps up to join her, turning in circles before settling into a warm orange curl against her hip. Through the window, she can see nothing but fog. The street lamps have become mere suggestions of light, pale smudges in the gray. Somewhere out there, the village sleeps, or at least begins its slow drift toward sleep. Lights are going out in cottage windows. Fires are being banked. Children are being tucked into bed with stories and good-night kisses. Nora thinks about all the evenings she's spent in this exact spot since moving to Mossbury. Hundreds of them by now. Each one slightly different but fundamentally the same. The warmth of the fire, the comfort of the cat, the quiet satisfaction of work well done. In London, her evenings had been different. Crowded pubs after work, drinks with colleagues who were more acquaintances than friends. Takeaway eaten standing in the kitchen because she was too tired to sit. Netflix scrolling past without her really watching it. A persistent, low-level exhaustion that she'd mistaken for normal life. She doesn't miss it. Not any of it. What she has now is smaller, quieter, in almost every measurable way, less exciting. But it's hers. She built it herself from the ground up, mixing her old life with new ingredients, until something entirely different emerged. The fire crackles, the cat purrs, the rain continues its gentle pattering against the glass. And in the kitchen, 2 bowls of dough rise slowly, breathing in the darkness, preparing to become bread. Nora feels her eyes growing heavy. The warmth of the fire, the weight of the cat, the long day finally catching up with her. She should go upstairs to her proper bed. But for now, just for a few more minutes, she stays where she is. The fog keeps its watch outside the windows. The village sleeps beneath it like a child beneath a blanket. And in the Willow Lane Bakery, surrounded by the tools of her trade and the results of her labor, Nora drifts toward dreams. Tomorrow there will be bread to bake, customers to serve, scones to make and tea to pour.
The endless, comforting rhythm of days in a bakery, each one both the same and different, like waves on a shore. But that's tomorrow. For now, there's only this: fire and fog and the soft sound of rain, the cat curled close, dough rising in the darkness, and the deep, abiding peace that comes from having found at last exactly where you belong. And so our time in Mossbury comes to an end. The fog still hangs over the village, soft and protective. The rain has faded to the gentlest of whispers, barely there at all. And in the Willow Lane Bakery, the fire has burned down to embers, casting a warm glow across the room where Nora sleeps. She'll wake in a few hours, stiff from sleeping in the chair, and make her way upstairs to her proper bed. By then, the fog may have lifted, or it may have thickened further, wrapping the village in gray until well past dawn. Either way, she'll rise early, as she always does. She'll light the oven and mix the flour and begin another day in this life she's chosen. Another day of simple pleasures and quiet satisfactions. Another day of being exactly where she belongs. Perhaps you feel some of that same peace settling over you now. The peace that comes from letting go, from giving yourself permission to rest. Your breath has slowed, your muscles have relaxed. The worries of the day have begun to fade, replaced by the soft comfort of approaching sleep. You don't need to hold on to anything tonight. Not the stories we've shared, not the images of the village and the bakery. They'll be here if you want to return to them. But for now, let them go. Let everything go. There's nothing you need to do. Nowhere you need to be. Just rest. Just sleep. Let the darkness gather around you like fog around a village, soft and protective, holding you safe through the night. And when you wake in the morning, you'll be rested, renewed, ready for whatever the day brings, just as Nora will be, rising in her cottage above the bakery, ready to begin again. For now, though, it's time to sleep. Good night.